Welcome to this episode of the Standing Ovation.
In that model of IT is here, technology is here to support the business's goals. Really, the bottom line is that IT has to do more with less, or at a minimum or at maximum, more with the same. And so, business hasn't changed. IT now has to deliver more with less. So the challenge when you do that is that in addition to the business needing to continue to deliver on their commitments, internal and external, to their customers as well, IT's commitments also likely have not gone down and in all likelihood have actually expanded. So security is ever more important. Compliance is ever more important. Operational mandates, patching systems, updating to new technologies. Those are things that just don't go away. So if you look at the scope of what's being asked of an IT leader, of an IT organization, the business wants as much or more as they did before. IT is having demanded upon them more mandates, more work that they have to do that's frankly just non-discretionary, all the while budgets are being tightened. Let's just, to keep it simple that way. And so in that kind of a model, discretionary spend has to be fine-tuned. So there are mandates that one must spend, and then there's a reduced amount of discretionary spend, which ultimately leads back to where we talked about before, a little bit of that buy versus build mentality. To the extent I can solve a problem of mine by buying a solution that comes ready-made, ready to integrate, essentially a one-time shot, so to speak, versus building my own technology to satisfy my IT technology needs as well as my business needs. Those kinds of investments, when I build, are really long-term investments. You don't write code once and it runs in perpetuity. You have to maintain it. You have to keep it secure. You have to enhance it. And so really that's what's happening is I think as budgets are tightened, and one is IT technology is forced to deliver as much or more, they should look with ever more scrutiny into whether they should buy or build to expand their portfolio of things they have to support mid and long term. I think it would be a little short-sighted to say that AI isn't already rocking the world of customer interactions, and that's only going to become more prevalent. A couple of challenges with that. AI is only as good today as the data that it's fed. So AI uses background data to build its models to ultimately mimic what a human could respond given this vast amount of data in the background. So number one, data is ever more important to feed and train AI platforms. The challenge, though, is that today in the AI world, users that want to incorporate AI should, I would say, tread carefully. I think that the promise of AI, mid and certainly long-term, is just unbelievable. But today, AI, fundamentally, even the best AI models out there are still very error-prone. They often give false results. False results from an AI platform via any kind of interactive mechanism. A false result can lead to security challenges. It can lead to legal challenges. And so if one were to say holistically, I'm going to replace my human interactions with my customers with an AI-centric, AI-based interaction with my customers, the challenge today is that AI models are error-prone, and they make mistakes, and they may say some things that will ultimately represent your company, your enterprise to your customers. Now you own that error, you own that interaction, and depending on the gravity, the magnitude of the error that's made, an end user, a customer on the other side, on the other end of the AI interaction, you might lose them forever, right? So AI used internally with, let's say, for example, internal employees to help enable internal interactions where you control both sides of the equation, both the end user and the AI models themselves. the liability there, the potential liability there, I think is much more reduced. But before one opens it up to broad use by your end customers, you have to first learn how to use the AI. Is the data you're feeding the AI platforms to build out their models, is that sufficient? Where are there gaps? Plug the gaps, and as you suggest, put guardrails around it such that I hate the term, but the blast radius, right? If something were to go wrong, if it's limited to internal constituents, that's actually very reasonable. And I think these learnings internally will expand to external consumption by your end users. AI is an amazing tool that's going to revolutionize customer interaction. The question is when and how, which guardrails need to be put in place, which data does it need to be fed to train the models. And so what we're doing is we're enabling best of breed AI platforms, ChatGPT being one example, such that our customers can I'll say begin to even more, I'll say play with it, but even more than play with it, actually begin to build out their models and begin to learn about how it can best be used to enhance customer interaction. And once it enhances customer interaction, ultimately that will lead to supplanting just fundamental human interaction, because there's a huge cost savings to gain. There's a time to market component to be gained. But we're in the crawl, walk, run kind of paradigm whereby I think the crawling is some customers of ours are going to crawl, want to crawl, need to crawl. Some are walking already, but before we all run en masse, I think we still have a lot of learning to do about how can and should this be used such that the liabilities can be controlled, but we get the benefits out of these kinds of AI platforms that we're enabling, but we learned beforehand how to minimize any potential impacts that this could have that could become negative to our end customers. How do we get to a phase where we can predict and improve interactions so that I know what you're likely going to call about before you call about it, or if not call, reach out to me, the enterprise, I'm able to better predict. And so again, customers will continue to demand a human's touch that leverages that data. Maybe the punchline is technology's role here is to provide the data from CRM platforms, from internal platforms, to enable humans to give this emotional set of responses to react in real time to real customers and their concerns and frustrations and perhaps anger. Ultimately, the future then is, so that's the human touch. Ultimately, the future is to be able to predict where they're going to be. And I think a lot more, that's a lot more of where AI and future models will come in to actually get into more of this predictive analysis, more than just business intelligence, but predictive analysis for that humans are just going to struggle with. But that, I think, is a lot of where AI is going to play in the mid and long term. As budgets decrease or even remain static, but as they decrease, in general, if there are things, the more you invest in custom code, that custom code just expands the portfolio of code that you have to essentially support in perpetuity. Code can and will have errors. Code must be made ever more secure and operationally more stable. And it's not a write code once and it runs forever. It's you write code once, you expand your portfolio of code, and then that's just that much more that you have to support ongoing in production environments, make changes for customers, make changes to accommodate business needs and requirements. And that's just, that's an expense that continues to grow, as opposed to in the buy space, when you buy a platform, the platforms generally, or buy a solutions are generally plug and play. And the onus of security and operational enhancement and support really goes on the vendor or the partner that you've purchased the solution from. So very big difference there in terms of philosophy. If the goal of journey management, of customer experience, is to bring together data from both external or packaged data sources and internal data sources, where do you spend your money? Do you spend your money connecting things that some of which you don't control, external packages. Do you integrate these things? Salesforce will continue to change, as will all other packages. Or do you spend your money enhancing your existing platforms that actually your IT organization, your technology organization is uniquely capable of doing? And these are platforms that were built specifically for your business challenges, for your business solutions, for your business strategies. And so ultimately, this intersystem plumbing, right? Really, it's plumbing that needs to be put in place that can take data from a packaged solution, take data from an internal solution, bring it all together into a blended data store, and then ultimately present that back to internal constituents within your enterprise, and also ultimately your customers, external constituents. This plumbing and this presentation is something that other organizations like OvationCXM, we've actually already done this. And so you can either choose to invest on rebuilding the plumbing and essentially taking from your ability and your capacity to build out your internal platforms, which you and only you can do. If you choose to build this out, you're going to do it just like essentially everyone else is going to do it. Or you can rely on another package, another buy solution, whereby the plumbing, the data aggregation, the presentation of this data really is already accommodated. And if it's already accommodated, again, it enables an IT organization to focus on things that only they can do, which is their internal proprietary platform, so to speak. When one implements a standard solution, a standardized solution, as an example of OvationCXM, our platform, CXMEngine, when you integrate a platform like this, these platforms can be delivered much more quickly and much more cheaply, right? Because they are standardized by design. And so in our solution, in a solution like ours, we have standardized connectors that go to packaged platforms. So they're essentially plug and play. We can work with existing IT technology organizations to build what I'll say are customized integrations to your core internal platforms, your proprietary platforms, but then all the rest is taken care of, right? Because we've standardized the interfaces themselves. And because of that, all that really needs to be done is data integration. And then ultimately, customization with regard to how you want your journeys, in this case, or your data presentation to be displayed internally and externally. Those are plug and play solutions, as opposed to figuring it all out from scratch, relying on sometimes external package entities to give you their information, their APIs, and to make accommodations if need be. We've already done all of that. And so instead, again, you can get to market much more quickly, much more easily by leveraging packaged solutions in areas where, frankly, the business value of providing connectivity is not necessarily shouldn't necessarily be a core competency or a market differentiator. Any line of code you have is a line of code that again, you're investing in perpetuity. That's just the nature of custom code. There are times and places for custom code when only an IT organization can write that custom code, right? Custom code that are business differentiators for the business strategies and objectives that exist. That should be custom code. But where you can avoid custom code, even better. The more internal code you have, the maintenance cost of the broader pool of internal code goes up. So it's not write once, forget. It's write once and continue to maintain with money, with time, and perpetuity. So therefore, the more you can focus your custom code on things that only you can control or that the business mandates, that's great. The more you can leverage packages where it isn't custom code and you put the onus of security and compliance and maintenance and enhancements and everything else on an external entity. By the way, that's what they do. That's their core competency. The more you can offload that to focus more of your now ever more dwindling budget and time on the custom stuff, the better. I look at buckets that a CIO should look at, does I think often look at requests made to them. So I have 4 buckets here. There are things you have to do that your IT organization has to do. You have to do compliance, security, and operational updates on your custom code. You and only you can do it. You know your code. These are mandates, and they essentially are non-discretionary. So that's money out of a pool that you have to do and only you can do. Then there are things that only you can personally do. So when you have an internal proprietary platform, of which many exist, and they should exist, because these are the platforms that you have either inherited or built over sometimes 20 years. It's your team, it's your code, you have the expertise, and you know exactly what the business wants, again, to drive their strategies, objectives, and imperatives. So there are some things that only you can do, or things you have to do, no question, things that only you can do. There are things that you'd like to do. So as the business says, by the way, next year I want to build out these new features and functions, and they don't fit cleanly into my existing set of platforms. These become discretionary expansions of existing functionality, things I'd like to do, I'd like to get to, if I have the money and the bandwidth. And these are true business imperatives that I want to enable. Those are things I'd like to get to. They're not mandatory, but if I don't, more and more the question will be asked, well, why can't you do this for me? Especially if there's another solution out there that I could just literally write a check, I plug it in, and it just works, right? So there are things you'd like to do. Let's call them discretionary things. And then finally, there are things that I would say that someone else can do. And in this case, right, there are often plug and play packages and solutions, sometimes very sexy and very broad and huge functionality. Other times, frankly, not as sexy, but mandatory nonetheless. And so I think the CRM expansion, our CXM engine, the networking, the integrations required to bring in disparate data sources into an internal enterprise's pool of data. These are things that actually someone else can do. And if an IT executive were to say, I want to spend my money building plumbing between platforms, the plumbing is not necessarily the differentiator, the market differentiator. The differentiator are the packages that you've chosen to bring into your portfolio. It's the custom solutions and platforms that you've built over time, which are great. The plumbing between them is actually not a differentiator necessarily, but it's mandatory to deliver a proper customer experience management solution. Now, if IT has to make changes, technology has to make changes to make relatively tactical changes to support the business requirements, that's that much less bandwidth that an IT organization, a technology organization has to compliance, to security, to enhance their existing platforms, et cetera. So one should look at solutions that are not necessarily business differentiators, and look at those things in this bucket of someone else can do this for me. Why would I not write a check, solve that problem, so I can then focus my limited resource, perhaps dwindling resources due to the economic reality of 2023 and perhaps beyond. Let me write a check to solve those things so I can focus on those things that are differentiators that I and only I can do that. And I think that's the perspective. If you're a good steward of your budget in 2023, you want to focus on things that you and only you can do that drive true business impact, and look to others where someone else can do it, and perhaps even do it better than you could internally, because these external entities do this as their core competence. But there are solutions out there that are plug and play that I could, much better, faster, cheaper, integrate into my ecosystem. I worry less about security. I worry less about operational capability, less about support. I outsource that, and I focus on things that I and only I can do. The enterprises that we work with today have a large disparate a collection of platforms that they use to collect, collate, and desire to integrate data. And so to the extent that, and by the way, these enterprises, these customers of ours, are constantly acquiring new companies, acquiring businesses. And the goal, one of many goals of acquiring a new business or company, is to also integrate their platforms into your data pool, let's say. And so in order to do that, what we call connectors, the more one can be flexible in any and all external solutions, and integrate with these external solutions to pull their data bidirectionally, leveraging data interaction into a centralized data store. And the more you can, if you acquire and therefore again choose to integrate an acquisition of yours, they too will expand the breadth of platforms that you now have data to pull from. And you too will have internal platforms where 1 to N, sometimes dozens of internal platforms. All of this data needs to be incorporated into a centralized data store in order to enable proper customer interactions. And so the more you have plug and play flexibility, which is time to market and cost reduction, the more you have a breadth of solutions that you can integrate with quickly and easily, because these solutions, these connectors, can our term, come out of the box, the more you're going to be a viable solution. Because if I have another competitive solution and they have a handful of packages that they accommodate, and they may or may not have simple ways to integrate with your internal platforms, now you're limited in the amount of data or the types of data that you can actually integrate together to drive a customer experience. That's going to be limiting. And so the goal, I think, is, right, there's such a breadth of solutions out there, packaged and internal, that being able to accommodate this breadth of solutions is actually critical. Because if you only have a subset, then if you have an acquisition, you want to do more integrations, then you'll only actually be integrating a subset of data that's possible out there. And so the ultimate solution for the customer experience by definition is limited. And so we are focusing on, and we're excited about the large number of connectors we already have, the large number of connectors and integrations we're rolling out this year and beyond, such that no matter who you acquire, who you want to integrate with, who you use as your internal CRM solution, and APIs and other ways of interacting with your own internal platforms, we can accommodate not everything today, but we're moving towards essentially anything and everything. Therefore, any data from any source that you want to integrate into a customer experience, we're going to be able to accommodate that, whereas others might not be able to do so.